Hello, welcome back everyone. This is episode number 3 in the Great Guitar Build of 2021. Let's make a neck.
Now I'm gonna start making some measurements for the neck. I'm gonna mark where the headstock angle is gonna start, as well as the heel. And I'm going with an 8 degree angle on the headstock. Gonna do the same thing to the other side. And then it's over to the bandsaw to cut off a rough angle of the headstock. And it's just a matter of planing it down and making it nice and smooth. And then some sanding, of course. The best part. And it's gonna look really good. I'm gonna mark out where the truss rod is gonna go, as well as making a center line, so I know exactly where to route the channel. And then I'm just gonna measure the size of the truss rod to get everything correct. And I'm using a rail on my router because I know that the neck is straight and planed. When you're using a small router bit like this, it's just important to take small passes. I'm just gonna fix the nut. I'm using a little bit of a bigger router bit. I'm gonna start my hole there for the truss rod, using a smaller bit at first. I'm switching over to my longer one. Going slow, making sure that the angle is correct. And yeah, we just pop through. And I'm gonna be using a cove bit to make it but a nicer hole for the truss rod. And you can see a little bit of a mark from where I drilled. So this is kind of the ghetto way of doing it. It's just sawdust and super glue, but I'm gonna have a veneer on the top so you won't be able to see that anyways. And here I just have a template for the neck profile. And yeah, that's not the best shot, but I couldn't actually see what I was filming. But sure, I'm just gonna draw out the shape of the neck. And then it's over to the bandsaw again. So this is the neck roughed out. ready to be routed. And this is kind of a sketchy way of doing it. You should really use a table router if you have one. The thing is that I have 2 routers and I'm just too lazy to make a router table for it. But seriously, be careful when you're doing this. It's kind of scary. Here I'm using my big router bit. That's just a little bit of tear out from the router, unfortunately, but I just had to super glue it together. And I'm gonna try to fix it with when I'm carving the neck. Shouldn't be an issue because the neck was a little bit too thin. I'm just gonna glue on an extra piece of wood here. Just want to make sure that it's clamped securely. And it's time to remove the clamps. Looks pretty good. And I'm gonna make the next break angle here. And I'm using a protractor to draw a 2-degree line. I'm just gonna use my router to cut it out. And now I'm gonna start drawing out a center line on the neck. Gonna help me center the template when I go to draw around it. And in guitar making, the center line is definitely the most crucial part. And you can just line things up here. And then I'm just gonna cut it out on the bandsaw. And it's time to route it out. And when it comes to the headstock, I'm just gonna route the sides, not the tip, because the tip is very, very difficult to route. At least on my punch router. I'm just gonna take a larger file and clean it up. That is looking pretty good. And this is the fretboard. It's an ebony fretboard. And I'm gonna make a center line here. And then I taped on a tape measure to see where my fret positions are gonna be, and I'm using the StewMac fret position calculator. Going with 24 frets. And now this is the fun part. I'm gonna be using a protractor again to mark out the fret positions. And because this is ebony, it's so dark, I'm using a light to just shine directly on the fretboard so I can see my lines a little bit easier. Then I'm just gonna use a box knife here, nothing fancy, to cut a little bit of a line in every position. It's gonna help me with the saw later on. And then I'm just gonna start cutting out the fret slots and making sure to clean the area every now and then. And I'm using just some masking tape to act as a depth stop. It's a little bit tedious, but you know, it has to be done. And I'm just gonna mark the positions for the tuners. It's a little bit easier now before I put on the fretboard because of the template. And I just went ahead and marked the center line on the sides as well. It's gonna help me line up the center line on the neck. Just like that. And I'm just gonna clamp it down, make sure that everything is straight. And I'm gonna be drilling just small holes through the fret slots. I'm gonna pin it with just a toothpick in this case. And on this truss rod, I choose to put some silicone here because it's a little bit of a gap. I don't always do that, but because of this truss rod model, it was moving a little bit. And I'm gonna tape up the truss rod channel. I'm gonna get to gluing on the fretboard. And because I have my toothpicks, it's very easy to line everything up and get it straight. And then it's just a lot of clamping involved. And of course a lot of clamps that needs to be taken off. Now we have to ruin the excess material. Switch over to the bandsaw again. Trying to cut as close to the neck as possible. then I'm gonna clean it up on the router. And now I'm gonna cut out a binding channel. And I'm gonna be leaving a little bit of a gap. On the fretboards it's gonna be black and white. And this is something that I learned from Texas Toast guys. It's a real cool feature. And I'm gonna do the end of the fretboard. I can't fit my binding bit here, so we have to be a little bit creative, using a piece of wood to act as a guide, and that worked out very well. And now I just secured the neck to my table, and it's time to start working on the radius. I'm going to be using a 12-inch radius, pretty standard, at least for a set neck design. And I'm also drawing some lines on the fretboard to just know what I'm removing. And yeah, this is one of the least fun experiences with building guitars. And it's very important that you keep your sandpaper clean to stay as effective. And yeah, that's the face of someone who's very tired of sanding. But just make sure that you check the radius with a radius gauge every now and then. And then I'm going from the other side to make it a little bit more even. And when I was finally done with that, it was time to start with the inlays. I'm just going to be using a block inlay on the 12th fret. It's a plastic one, but you know, it looks pretty good. And here I'm just making sure to get the center correct. And this is the correct position. I'm going to be using a knife here as well to just cut a little bit of a line to help my chisel go the correct way. And then you're just going to make small passes with a chisel. I'm just gonna hammer down and make some deeper marks. And then it's just gonna go right in. I'm just gonna be using some super glue to glue the inlay in place. And then gluing around the edges, adding some ebony dust to clean up. And then I'm gonna use a file to get it level. As well as my radius beam. And I'm just gonna fix small holes here that are still left with some ebony dust and super glue. is the finished product. Came out looking pretty good, I think. And then I just have to go back and cut the fret slots a little bit deeper because of the radius. I'm just gonna file down through the binding channels, and then I'm gonna flatten out the binding just using a heat gun, and it's gonna go flat by itself. Being careful to not stay in the same position for too long. Here's some acetone that I'm going to be using to basically melt the binding onto the fretboard, and I'm going to be using a syringe to apply it. I'm just going to flood the area. So here I've taped the binding into the binding channel, but on the side, just on the side of the neck. And I'm just going to go ahead and apply the acetone. A little bit difficult to get the tape down because of the acetone. And I just went ahead and applied a few more pieces of tape to hold the binding down. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. And after that I went ahead and cut out a piece to fit on the end of the fretboard. And then it's just the same process. And binding with acetone is a lot faster than using binding glue or super glue, whatever you wanna use. And then I'm just gonna remove the tape 24 hours later, and everything should be good. And this is what a neck looks like. I think the binding came out looking very nice. And then I'm just gonna scrape it down using a razor blade. And then I'm using a chisel to fix the end here. And then I use the radius beam to just make everything come together. And also took a flat piece of wood to sand down the end, and also scraped the side of the binding. And some of the binding actually melted into the fret slots, and just using a knife here to remove any of the excess. And then I'm gonna go ahead and radius my fret wire. And I'll make sure that it's a 12-inch radius. And I'm gonna cut off the frets. I'm also gonna be removing the fret tanks because I have a binding, and I don't have a fret tank nipper, so I'm just gonna be using a file. This takes forever, so I will definitely buy a fret tank nipper after this. And then I'm using a triangular file to just widen the fret slots a little bit. It's gonna make everything a little bit easier. I'm gonna apply some wood glue to my fret slots. Sometimes I use super glue, it just depends on removing it. I'll put in my frets, just hammer them in a little bit. I'm gonna use my press. And this is what it looks like when all the 24 frets are done. And it's time to remove the ends of the frets. And I'm just gonna file them flat to the neck. And And then I'm gonna be using a 35-degree angle to angle the end of the frets. And this is what it looks like. And I'm just gonna grab a random orbital sander and just flatten out the back of the neck before I start carving it. And I still have this little piece of tear out that I'm gonna try to remove with the carving. So I'm gonna start by marking the center line. Something like that. And here I just added how wide I want the back of my neck to be, and this is gonna be the first cut as well. I'm going for a pretty modern C shape, and I'm using a rasp as well as this plane. And this is what the first cut looks like. And I just added more lines to do the second one. So you just gotta work one area at a time, and it will come out looking pretty good. Now we just have the last part left, where we're gonna move over towards the fretboard. And then I'm gonna start working on the volute. It's just a lot of filing involved. It's not that hard. And this is what it looks like when I'm pretty much finished with the volute. And then I'm gonna start working on the heel. And this is the heel roughed out. I'm gonna start to remove these hard edges. Starting with a fire. And I'm using some sandpaper to start smoothing out everything and make it nice and round. And I'm also going to be using my sander here to try and even everything. And this is the magic trick. Basically, take a piece of sandpaper in your hand and you just move it up and down, and just like when you play it, then it's gonna get a little bit of a shape of your own hand. And now I'm gonna remove the axis on the top of the headstock that I glued on. Just planing it and using the sander. Drill out the tuner holes all the way through. And this is what it looks like. And now I'm gonna go ahead and put on an ebony veneer. It's not gonna cover absolutely everything, and the tip is still gonna be without the veneers. I'm just gonna have to add one later. And I'm taking a razor blade to just cut it out, trying to go close to the headstock. You have to be a little bit careful because ebony has a tendency to break, especially veneers. And then I'm using a file to even everything out. And this is what it looks like with the tip of the veneer added, and as well as going through the tuner holes and the truss rod. And this is basically the finished neck.
So this is the neck. Came out looking really good. Still have a little bit of work to do. I have to add side dots and stuff, but that's gonna come in another episode. And talking about other episodes, in the next one we're gonna start joining everything together, the neck and the body, and carving the body and stuff. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and or liking. And with that being said, thank you and bye bye.